It's not the money that makes you successful, it's the person you need to become in order to get the money. It's not climbing Everest that makes you successful, it's the level of resourcefulness you found within yourself in order to pull together the team, get to that location, overcome the challenges and reach the summit. It's the person we become in pursuit of the goals that is the true masterpiece of life. You got to beware of the thief on the street who will steal your money, but you got to beware of the thief inside your head who will steal your promises. I was in the zoo today, took my 2-year-old down, and we walked around the zoo. We saw hippos, we saw wildebeest and zebras, we saw the lions, we saw gorillas, monkeys. The animals have a good life in one respect. There's a fence around them that keeps predators and competition out. They're fed 3 or 4 times a day, well-balanced meal. They're taken care of. But yet we look at zoos and we think, oof, this isn't a great way to live. A human being, would you want to live in a cage in a zoo? But the other choice, total freedom, is also a scary thing. And there's a paragraph from the Daily Drucker. This is a book that lives in our bathroom, 365 days of Drucker. So just some days in the morning there's a useful quote. And there's one I'd like to read here on the nature of freedom. And what Drucker says, freedom is not fun. It's not the same as individual happiness, nor is it security or peace or progress. It is a responsible choice. Freedom is not so much a right as a duty. Real freedom is not freedom from something. That would be license. It is freedom to choose between doing or not doing something, to act one way or another, to hold one belief or the opposite. It is not fun, but the heaviest burden laid on man, to decide his own individual conduct as well as the conduct of society, and to be responsible for both decisions. And as I walked around the zoo today, and you think, freedom, the freedom that we hear of in movies like Braveheart, the freedom to do what I want. This isn't the freedom that Drucker is talking about. It's the freedom that I am responsible for both the upside and the downside of my decisions. I own the consequences of my decisions. That it's a freedom where I am responsible. And you have to learn to be responsible in a world of abundance. I think we see the world over. A lot of people are not learning how to control your food intake in a world of abundant food. But that's freedom, the freedom to make those choices and be responsible for the consequences. The freedom to choose to smoke, but to be responsible for the consequences. And if I look at school, I think what was valued when I was a student was something that we confuse with discipline. Something that, when you see a teacher and 30 students sat quietly at their desks, it looks like discipline, but very often it's obedience. And obedience is quite a different thing than discipline. Discipline comes from the inside. Discipline comes from a choice within me to decide to do something. Obedience inside is a very different feeling than discipline. Obedience, I'm doing it because someone has told me to. There's a saying that Andy Warhol, if he could hire anyone, if he could really get someone, who he would have hired was a boss. Because the freedom as an artist, where you are responsible for your productivity, you are responsible for your creation. Sometimes it would be good just to have someone to tell you to do it, to give you a deadline and hold you to do it, and to enforce some consequence in the short term. And I think this difficulty comes because the true things that lead to a good life or a bad life, to success or failure in life, they don't happen. They're small things that don't really affect us in the short run, but they have a huge effect in the long run. The saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, if today you don't have the apple, nothing changes. If tomorrow you don't have the apple, nothing changes. It takes 10 years of not having the apple, and then the price starts to be really clear. And to learn this, to learn at a young age the ability to delay gratification, the ability to use our imagination to picture where the set of decisions we are taking today will take us, and also to understand that we are quite weak as human beings. There's a psychology experiment that has always scared me, and it scared the psychologist that ran it. In the experiment, volunteers are brought into the psychologist's office, and when they arrive, the person who acts as the receptionist comes to the volunteer and says, "Look, I'm sorry, we've lost the paperwork for today, so I don't know which of the experiments you're assigned to. I'll tell you what, I'll leave you with this coin," and they gave over a coin and said, "You'll flip it heads or tails. I'll tell you the 2 experiments that we're doing today. If it's heads, you'll do experiment 1. Let me tell you experiment 1. Oh, experiment 1, that's pretty fun. People enjoy that. It's comparing a couple of photos, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. Anyway, tails, experiment 2. Let me tell you about experiment 2. Oof, it's an hour and 10 minutes long. It's mathematical. It's quite a tough one. Anyway, A or B, I'll leave you with the coin. I'm going to go get some things set up, and when I come back, let me know what the coin did." So the psychologist, the person playing the receptionist, heads out. And of course, in this experiment, they head out and they stand behind the 2-way mirror watching what happens. So question for you: how many people flip the coin? How many people in that situation between a short, fun experiment or a long, rather drudgery experiment, how many people flip the coin? And the answer in those experiments were, I think 93% did not flip the coin. They let the receptionist head out and they took a decision based on the fact the consequences are small. You know, what cost is there here? Of the remaining 7%, quite a few flipped the coin, but they kept flipping it until they got the answer they want. And I don't know which is more dangerous, the person that just straight out lets down on their promise, or the person who intends to keep their promise but is weak and just keeps flipping. And this experiment was repeated around the world in many different countries, so it's not a particular thing of any culture. And it's quite a scary thing, because this is not other people. This is me and this is you. 90% of the times we're going to come up with a reason why just now I don't have to keep my word. And Jim Rohn, I always remember a saying he had: you got to beware of 2 thieves. You got to beware of the thief on the street who will steal your money, but you got to beware of the thief inside your head who will steal your promises. And the ability to be free, I think, comes down to our ability to keep promises to ourselves, to set a certain standards for yourself and live up to it no matter what. And it's so easy to excuse yourself. There's so many things in the world can give you good excuses for why it shouldn't matter. But I think it matters because of the person you become. You know, today, myself and my wife, we had a lunch with baby daughter sleeping after the zoo. And when the bill came after lunch, I'd had a vermouth and it wasn't on the bill. And we looked at the bill, we're going to pay it, and we said, should we say that they haven't put the vermouth on there? And we both said yes. Because my wife said to me, we're not going to get rich not paying, but we'll certainly become poorer in spirit by avoiding it. And I think this attitude, that the reason for holding yourself to a higher standard and practicing that your word really matters, is that's at core the practice of being free. There's a saying, you know, Judas, if you measure a life by, you know, success is money, Judas got money. Judas gave away a word and in return got 30 pieces of gold. But at what price? And there's a saying that when Judas realized what he'd done and he had the 30 pieces of gold, but he realized that his friends were to die because he'd given his word for the money, he went to try and give the money back. And the authorities said, no, we don't want it back. We got what you want and you got what you wanted. We don't want the money back. And the burden of that money, but at what price, led Judas to hang himself. So I think the price that we pay for success, you got to be very careful to decide what is success for you, and be careful that it's not the money that makes you successful. It's the person you need to become in order to get the money. It's not climbing Everest that makes you successful. It's the level of resourcefulness you found within yourself in order to pull together the team, get to that location, overcome the challenges and reach the summit. It's the person we become in pursuit of the goals that is the true masterpiece of life. And I love the idea of Jim Rohn, make your life a masterpiece. The way to use freedom is not to make things that are a masterpiece, but make your life be a masterpiece. And we need to teach our children, and we need to help those around us how to use freedom, because in any day we will let ourselves down so many times. But the key is to forgive ourselves quickly and then remember why we set those standards. And we don't set the standards to impress anyone. We set those standards to live our life as a masterpiece that can inspire ourselves and others. So while I was in the zoo today, I was thinking, be so careful about wishing for a cage around you, wishing for someone to provide 3 meals every day, to take care of all the problems, take them away. Because as you look in at the warthogs, they're lying there on the ground in the sleep in the sun, no problems, all been taken away. But that is not a masterpiece of a life. And I think within our heads, our ego is so often looking for something that will take away the pain, take away the problems. But it's through facing the problems and choosing even bigger problems to overcome, choosing causes to put your life towards and being willing to pay the price to achieve it. It's not the achieving it that matters. It's the person you become in order to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. And the person you become by each day becoming better able to keep your promises, to not let the thief on the street steal your money, but don't let the thief in your head steal your promises. So reflections from a day at the zoo in Barcelona. Spring is coming. Have a great week. Looking forward to your likes, your comments, your shares, your questions. What do you think? Freedom. And always good to have a couple of books of this style, the sort of 365 days, quotes a day. Good way of just starting the day with a good thought in your head. Have a good one.